For having me. All right. Am I ready to take it away, I guess?
You're ready to take it away.
All right. Oh, welcome everybody. I'm so happy you all can join us tonight. As Kathy said, my name's Nicole Fuller. I'm a registered dietitian. I work for the Valley Hospital. I've been in the fields of dietetics now for over 20 years, which just seems crazy to me. That just means I'm getting old. And I've worked in a wide variety of areas of dietetics, long-term care, acute care, dialysis, outpatient counseling, and as well as doing community programs, lots of speaking engagements. And it really, from someone who never thought that I'd be doing any public speaking, I found that over the past few years, it's actually very rewarding to get out and talk to the public about things like nutrition. So without further ado, let's dive into conquering cravings. Okay. I briefly just want to go over the goals of the program or presentation. Because although the title of the presentation is Conquering Cravings, it's important to kind of go over all of these points that are listed here to review the categories, to find out how to identify our hunger and the different types of hunger there are in order to fully understand what cravings are and how to conquer them. Okay, so we're going to talk about hunger, emotional eating, cravings, lots of tips and strategies at the end, and just touch on also eating without guilt. And then I will be available for any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. And if you have questions as we're going along and you don't want to forget your question, you can always put it in the chat box and we can get to that at the end. Okay, so reasons why we eat. It's kind of important if we're talking about cravings. We got to also talk about reasons why we eat, because it's not just because your stomach's growling, right? So we kind of want to fine tune things and figure out what makes us eat. Obviously, yes, we feel hungry, our stomach is rumbling, growling, whatever, but sometimes we just eat because we're low on energy. We feel like sometimes if you go too long without eating, you kind of get in that, like, you feel like you almost can't move, and it's not because you're tired, it might be because you're hungry. The feeling of having an empty stomach is almost, the feelings of hunger. Maybe you're just eating because you're so regimented and scheduled. So it's been 3 hours since my last meal and now it's time to eat. So these are just some of the reasons why people eat. But also talking about cravings is, we want to bring it back to the beginning, listening to our body, listening to those hunger and fullness cues, and to understand how our body's trying to communicate with us, and listen to those hunger and fullness signals. Okay. And you might get sick of me bringing this up because I mentioned it a few times during this presentation, but one way to pay attention to those hunger and fullness cues is by keeping a food diary, a food journal, food log, whatever you want to call it. Okay. By doing this, you're kind of forced to recognize your eating patterns, whether they're good or bad eating patterns, no judgment. Keeping a food journal, diary, whatever, you might see that you're always reaching for a handful of candy as an afternoon pick-me-up, or that you have pizza every night for movie night, things like that. So hunger, fullness cues. What are some hunger cues? Stomach growling, like we talked about, low energy. Sometimes people are like, oh, I feel really shaky. You might, it might be hunger. Sometimes people have headaches or problems focusing. Sometimes we even use the term feeling hangry. You're just feeling that desperate almost because you're that hungry. So those are some hunger cues. There's also fullness cues, right? And I think we just really don't pay attention to these. I think as kids, kids are born with this ability. You know, have you ever seen your own children or your grandkids and they stop when they're full and they want to eat when they're hungry? But, you know, if I give my 9-year-old a bowl of ice cream and he doesn't finish it, I think to myself, how can he possibly not finish it? It's so delicious. Well, it's because he's not hungry anymore. And I feel like as we get older, we lose that ability. So this is why it's important, right? To be able to stop when we're not hungry anymore. So some fullness cues, you feel comfortable, you're feeling satisfied, that feeling of not being hangry is gone. And also I like to bring in that 20-minute rule for fullness, okay? And it's brought up a lot. I mean, I've heard it a lot. I don't know if it's just because I'm a dietitian, but so if you've heard it before, you could just ignore me. But for those that haven't heard it, it really does take 20 minutes for that the signal from your stomach to go to your brain to tell your brain I'm full. Okay, so if you're eating too fast, you're not paying attention to what you're eating. It's easy to override that system, right? Because you're stuffing your face within 10 minutes and you've already overeaten, but you still sometimes feel still hungry because you haven't allowed your body that time. Okay, so 20-minute rule will also give you some time to hone into those cues, right? Okay, this levels of hunger, this is important. Okay, there's a hunger scale. Let's do 0 to 10, rating your hunger. 0 meaning you're starved, famished, you're hangry, you know, you're a little irritable. When you get around 3, when you're at level 3, you know, you're hungry, you feel the pangs of hunger. It's probably, you know, time to eat something. 5, you're comfortable. You can go, you don't really need to eat. You're fine. 6, you know, you've been eating, you're somewhat full, you're comfortable. 8, 9, we're starting to get a little uncomfortable. You might have to loosen the belts, you know, or, you know, wish you wore a stretchy pants, something like that. By the time you get to 10, we're talking Thanksgiving level, right? You're nauseated. You say, I am never going to eat this much again until next Thanksgiving. We want to pay attention to these levels of hunger because when you get down to a 0, 1, 2, you're probably going to eat past full. You're probably going to make worse food choices, right? So I kind of try and recommend or teach people to start eating when you're at a 3, 4, right? Because your chances are, if you're starting to eat at a 3, 4, you're somewhat hungry. You need to eat, but you're not desperate for food. If you start eating around then, you're more likely not to eat past 6, right? We don't want to get to an 8, 9, 10. That is not the goal, right? That is not our goal. 5, 6 is where we want to be. So in between, somewhere between 3 and 6 is a good range. And I don't know, I think a lot of what we cover in this presentation, I feel like a lot of it can be related back to intuitive eating. That's popular words that you might hear a lot about because they do use this too, the levels of hunger. Okay, so we've discussed reasons why we might eat, our hunger fullness cues, levels of hunger. We also want to touch on emotional eating, okay? Emotional eating is a way to suppress or soothe some certain type of emotions, whether it be stress, anger, boredom, sadness, loneliness. And we've all been here, right? We've all done this. Sometimes it's best to know what your triggers are so that you're aware of them when they're happening to you, right? So, and you're aware of why you might be eating. And again, another way, here's when I'm going to talk about it again. One way you can track your triggers or the reasons, your emotions is by keeping a food journal. Okay. Write down not only what you eat and when you're eating, but how you're feeling, before you started eating. Sometimes, and this might not work for everyone, right? These are just tips and tricks. Some people it might work for, some people it might not, and some people need the details and some people don't. These are just examples of ways that you can try and conquer your cravings, whether it be because of emotional reasons or whatnot. So, or boredom, stress. So tracking it. Okay. You can also write down your hunger scale, like where you were on the scale before you started eating. And then you can look back at your food journal and you might see some patterns, right? You might see that often you snack when you feel like you just want to eat because you were bored or, you were just emotional, but you weren't truly hungry. Okay. Excuse me. Let's take a sip. I threw in a couple cartoons just because I thought they were funny and kind of related to some of what we're talking about. So like this one, today I will live in the moment, unless the moment's unpleasant, in which case I will eat a cookie, right? Emotional eating. We can all relate. So we've got emotional eating, but this is a big one. And I find a lot of clients or patients that come to me, this is something they do, unconscious eating, times when we're just eating and not really paying attention, right? It's not because of emotion. Someone offers you a snack. How many times you go to somebody's house just to see them and they've got food out, snacks out. You're not even hungry, but you're going to eat it. Or you're talking on the phone and you're munching. I had a patient who loves to read, but every time she reads, she has to be eating. But you're not really paying attention. What, right? Watching TV, you're on the computer. How many times are you prepping? Whether it's you're making dinner for yourself or your family, or lunch for the kids, and you're, oh, here's a slice of cheese. Oh, I'm making sandwiches, and you're not really paying attention. That happens all the time. In the car, you get the point with some of these tips, right? So this is something people do every day, right? These habits sometimes start from when we form an association between stimuli and responses. So for instance, when you're watching to your favorite TV show, a commercial comes on and you always usually get up during the commercial to grab a snack, and then you sit back down, you start eating the snack before you know it, the bag is finished. Same thing like the woman who always has to eat when she's reading her book, right? She's reading her book, she's got her snacks, and she's not paying attention. It's like the two go hand in hand, right? So these are some instances when unconscious eating can occur. And how do you think one way you can stop some unconscious eating? Ding, ding, ding. The person who said keeping a food journal or food diary or log is correct. All right. This is one way that you can do it. Also, just being aware in the moment that the two go together, whatever it is, whatever you're unconsciously doing with food, right? Sometimes it's just seeing those patterns come together, and then you can work on breaking them. How can I be eating unconsciously when all I think about is food? I just thought that was pretty funny to throw in there. So here's little Homer Simpson. Of course, he loves his donuts. What actually is a food craving? Okay, so I've got two definitions here. One is an intense desire to consume a specific food, and it's different from normal hunger. And number two, a very strong desire for something. All right. One of the most widely accepted theories on cravings is that the human predisposition to highly palatable foods, which we as humans developed a long time ago, that predisposition has basically gone crazy in the world we live in now because of the wide availability of these amazingly delicious foods, right? We have a predisposition to highly palatable foods because there's so much available to us now. We want to eat even when we don't need to. Look at Homer does not need to eat a donut, but it tastes so good. It's so highly palatable, right? And the more often we eat these highly palatable, delicious, either sugary or salty foods, the more our brains learn to expect them and learn to want them, right? Then it really becomes a craving. But is it really hunger? Okay. The reason you might feel that hungry feeling may have to do more with seeking pleasure from that food than with the calories. Like your body isn't craving the calories or feeling hungry because it's actually hungry. It's because that food just tastes so darn good. Okay. What kind of foods are we craving? Well, this is almost rhetorical. We know what we're craving, right? Usually it's the fatty foods, it's the sugary foods, it's not, carrots and celery and fruit, and whole grains. Carbohydrates, like those delicious donuts, they boost our levels of serotonin, they make us happy. That combination, fat and sugar, sometimes have a calming effect on us, right? So we want more and more and more. I do think that the more we make changes to our diet, make some lifestyle changes, look at what we are eating, and we try and add more fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, more whole grains. I truly believe when you start to add more of them to your diet, you enjoy them more. And dare I say, even start to crave them. Some days I love just eating a good salad, so throw some lean protein on there, maybe some healthy nuts for some fat, avocado, but sometimes it just tastes so good to eat that. We can retrain our brains. So some helpful tips. The 20-minute rule. Remember, the brain is not going to feel that fullness for about 20 minutes. So sit down, take time, enjoy your food, wait 20 minutes. I even do this sometimes with myself. I'll finish a meal, 5 minutes flat, and I'm like, I'm still hungry. But I'm like, really, am I really hungry? If I wait 30 minutes, sometimes I'm like, why did I think after 5 minutes I was still hungry? Because that feeling has gone away, that 20-minute rule. Finding non-food related activities you can do rather than give into your cravings, things like that. Keeping the food journal, writing down what you eat, when you eat, how you're feeling, those hunger fullness cues. It's going to help you identify if you're doing a little bit more emotional eating. If you exercise, keep exercising. Exercising is so great. And when I say exercising, do something you enjoy. Okay. I'm not saying you have to go for a run. You don't have to, you don't have to train for a marathon. Could be enjoying the outdoors. The weather is getting nicer, especially in the morning and in the evenings. Going for walks helps reduce stress, can help keep your mind off of food. Fighting boredom. Again, this also goes back to finding non-food related activities. Okay. Some more tips. One tip, don't skip meals, right? And here I also put, don't let calories get too low. I can't tell you how many times I have clients come in. We go through what they eat in a day. They skip breakfast, or their breakfast might be like a protein bar. Lunch is very light, but then by the time they get home from work, they want to raid the pantry. So they're eating whatever they can get their hands on. They're food prepping, they're eating all that. And then at night, they just want to eat. It's because we've skipped meals, right? Our meals aren't balanced. So of course you're going to be hungry later because you haven't been eating enough during the day. Okay. Limiting sweets and refined grains, trying to avoid the extra sugars. Refined grains, meaning grains, things made with white flour. We want to choose whole grains, whole wheat bread, whole grain bread, where it says whole grain, whole wheat in the first ingredient, or, quinoa, couscous, barley, whole wheat pasta, brown rice. They are not the devil. They are good for us. It's the refined grains we want to limit. When it comes to stress, Stress management is very helpful. However, that looks for you, okay? What works for one person might not work for another. Meditation, there are many apps that you can download on your phone. A lot of them are free to learn how to meditate, doing yoga, even deep breathing. Someone told me that when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, they do some deep breathing. They go up their hand, they take up one finger, they take a deep breath, down one finger, they exhale, up, breathe in, down, breathe out on both hands. Okay, that's something you could do for some breathing exercise. Some people like massages, taking a bath, just getting out in nature, gardening, whatever helps you, right? We talked a little bit about finding non-food related activities to turn to when you're feeling that urge to eat, whether it might be boredom or just emotional. Again, this list is just some things I could come up with. I'm sure each and every one of you can add another thing to this, but some things to do instead of eating, exercising, knitting, reading. Now, for the one woman who can only read and eat, reading would not be something I would recommend for her. Talking to someone, journaling, go to the library, listening to music. I personally love to listen to podcasts. Any murder mystery podcast that's out there, I probably listen to it because for me, that is something that keeps my mind off things. I go for a walk with the dog and I listen to that. There are so many hobbies. Keeping trigger foods for you out of the house might work, keeping the cravings out. It doesn't work for everybody, and sometimes it's not that realistic for some families, but it does work for some, so I always like to mention it. If you can keep it out, keep it out. Preventing mindless eating. I kind of feel like we touched on this throughout the presentation, but asking yourself, am I really hungry? If you're not really hungry, but you feel like you need to eat something, I always tell people, eat. If you're feeling out, that you have to eat something, even if you're not truly hungry, portion it out, right? How many times do we take a bag of chips and you say, I don't know, I'm only going to have a few. And by the time if you really sat there and counted out how many chips you ate when you open the bag, it's probably way more than you think. So I say, portion something out and eat it. Don't take the ice cream container and eat from it thinking you're only going to eat a few bites because it's going to be more. Put it in a bowl, okay? Trying to avoid eating mindlessly, unconsciously, computer, other distractions. The hunger fullness cues are very important, as well as the scale, right? The hunger fullness scale, the 0 to 10, right? We want to be 3 to 6. Trying to avoid late night eating, because I feel like that kind of goes into mindless eating or feeling of, I deserve something before I go to bed, and I always like to throw on getting enough sleep. Sleep is so important, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Sleep is very important. It has to do with overall health, wellness, balance. Now, some questions to ask yourself, and this is almost like a review. Did I let myself get too tired or too hungry, right? Did I let myself get to a 0, 1, 2? Pay attention. Did I turn to food to deal with my emotions? And by the way, we should never feel guilty for doing any of these because we've all been there at some point, right? Did I eat just because the food was there? Because I saw other people eating, because I was making dinner for someone. It's so funny. I will just say I noticed my family recently had COVID and I was the first one to come down with it. So my family made me wear a mask. Would you believe how much I did not eat that I normally would eat because I had the mask on my face? So if I was making myself something, I couldn't just pop something in my mouth without having to pull the mask down, right? So, or even though I had to wear a mask in the family, sometimes the kids still had me make them something to eat. Generally, I would be, like I said, putting a piece of cheese or a little sliver of cheese in my mouth. I couldn't do that. I had the mask on my face. So paying attention to what you're putting in your mouth, okay? Now, with all this said and done, I don't want you to feel guilty about what you're eating. I don't want people to be like, well, tomorrow is day one. You can't change what you've done, and food should not feel guilty, right? Move on. There's another meal. There's another snack ahead. Just make better choices. Eat more of the best and less of the rest, and move on, okay? You can get back on track. Don't feel guilty, okay? I want to give you some healthy snack ideas because I think that sometimes when we think of snacking, we think of things that come out of a box or a bag. Bring it back to basics. Like if you are not, it's recommended, let's say 2 to 3 servings of fruit a day, and you're not eating fruit with breakfast, lunch, or dinner. When are you eating it? Eat it as a snack. Try and pair your snacks doing a protein, some fiber. So like if you're having fruit, do it with a nut butter, peanut butter, almond butter. That's, you get fiber from the apple and some protein from the peanut butter or almond butter. Fiber keeps you feeling fuller longer, so does protein, okay? Vegetables with hummus, cheese and some whole grain crackers, almonds or other nuts or seeds. And when I talk about nuts and seeds, yes, they have some great healthy fats. I do recommend limiting nuts to about a 1/4 cup serving size. Cottage cheese, if you like cottage cheese, great source of protein. Have some cottage cheese with some fresh fruit. Trying to pair protein, fiber, fuller, longer, and you're also going to, if you think about it like that, then you're more likely to add in more of the, more of the best, less of the rest, avoiding the processed foods, but eating things like this, including regular breakfast, regular meals and snacks. Don't skip the breakfast. Try to have protein at each meal. Protein is going to keep you fuller longer. And here it says 15 to 30 grams of protein. It's not hard to get that, okay? 3 ounces of any kind of meat, chicken, fish, lean beef. 3 ounces is about the size of a deck of cards, and 3 ounces of meat is about 21 grams of protein. 2 hard-boiled eggs is 14 grams of protein, right? So it's easy. Yogurt has protein in it. Greek yogurt is higher in protein than regular protein. These will keep you feeling fuller longer. Thinking about making sure your meal is colorful, having fruit, vegetables with each meal. I encourage balanced meals because balance will also help you from getting those cravings, right? Briefly, I'm just going to look at this. You can also go to choosemyplate.gov. It's the USDA's campaign of how to build a plate, which also goes, this is from Harvard Medical School. Half your plate. Here it has fruits included, but I say, if you do half your plate vegetables, 1/4 whole grains, 1/4 healthy protein. Whole grains is basically your carbohydrate. Half your plate vegetables, 1/4 of it carbohydrates, 1/4 of it healthy protein, okay? If you keep your plate to this, you can even fit pizza in this, right? If you have a slice of pizza, the crust is going to be your grain. Now, is it the best choice? No, but it fits. The protein will come from the cheese, and do a side salad or do, broccoli or whatever vegetable it is you want, and it can fit right into this. Hydrate often, make sure you're drinking water. You could drink it throughout the day, have a glass before each meal. It will also fill you up a little bit. At night, try to avoid eating late. Nighttime, you're trying to prepare your body for sleep. Trying to avoid eating, again, in front of the TV, computer, iPad, cell phone, whatever it is. So, in summary, we're trying to tune into our body, listen to our bodies, go back to feeling those hunger cues, feeling the fullness cues, slowing down, right? Sitting at a table when you're eating, not having distractions around, right? Savoring each bite, taking a little bit longer to chew, okay? Tasting the food and not rushing through it. Trying to find non-food related activities to do to deal with your emotions. Keeping a food journal, diary, log, whatever you want, that might work for you. Exercising, getting plenty of sleep, drinking water. Okay, keeping healthy foods in the house are not only your meals, but your snacks. Remember, snacks don't have to come out of a box or a bag. Okay, more the best, less of the rest. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions, excuse me, any questions anybody might have. And if you don't have a question, that means I just answered all of it during the presentation. I've done my job correctly.
Okay, so you can ask your questions in the chat feature, which is located on the bottom of your screen, or you can simply unmute yourself and ask Nicole a question directly.
So happy we have over 20 participants. This is great.
Yeah, they're a great group. They really are. Anybody have any questions about your cravings? Again, you can unmute yourself or you can type it into the chat in the bottom of your screen. If you came in late for the presentation, I'm going to send this recording out on Monday. Okay, do you have a question from Nancy? She's asking, are there any techniques to curb binge eating?
So I think some of the techniques that we talked about during the presentation overall, you know, you kind of have to find what it is that's preceding the binge. I feel like maybe, you know, keeping for someone who's having difficulty binging, maybe keeping a food journal, diary, log, writing down your emotions, what's happening around it, what time it's happening, what you're doing. If you really want to dive deep into it, you can always make an appointment with one of our outpatient dietitians through the Valley Hospital. They could do one-on-one sessions to really work with you. But I think keeping track of what you're eating is a good way to go.